Hello and welcome. This is Ava from Soul GPS. Today, a little bit different video, a little bit of a different feel. I have been asked lately by my viewers and clients to share with you my daily supplement regimen that helps to keep me in this Goldilocks zone of a good cruising mode. A lot of victims of narcissistic abuse, a lot of people who've experienced abuse coming from other people in relationships and families, at work and so on, what happens is it severely dysregulates our hormonal system because it pumps huge amounts of cortisol into the body, into the system. So this is something that I have discovered a little bit later in the game, but it's been sort of the story of my life. For many years, I've been pretty highly anxious most of my life, and then occasionally after big bouts of stress I would slip into more of a low mode, almost kind of a depressed mode, which is fairly normal. I later learned after you withstand a lot of abuse, a lot of stress from the outside, and the body gets overwhelmed. What happens is we go into what's called CPTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or response, as Richard Grannon has called it, and I like that way of describing it much better, because it's not a disorder, it is indeed a response. It's a response that you can learn to change. So in today's video, I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and instead of talking to you about what you can do about controlling your thoughts and quelling the inner critic and talking to yourself in a positive way, healing the inner child, and so on and so forth. Today we're going to talk about the things you can do for your body, for your brain specifically, in order to feel better. The brain goes through quite a bit of ordeal while you're in the relationship and also after you come out of the relationship. So it is very helpful to give it the support that it needs. Now, before I get into the video, I wanted to make a quick announcement. I'm going to be teaching a workshop in Amsterdam on November 24th. I'm very excited about that. It is for 10 people only. Spaces are filling, but I still have some room, and it would be great to host you. It would be great to meet you, and for us to work together to form a community of empathy and compassion. And what we're going to be talking about is looking at the inner child and connecting with our innocence. We're also going to look at setting boundaries, especially around holidays that are coming up. And so there's going to be quite a bit of stress. It will spike up because we need to deal with people sometimes who are abusive, who are not recognizing our boundaries, and trample all over them. And then we'll also cruise into a very exciting space for me, which is accessing your intuition, your soul GPS, in order to tap into your life's purpose, your full potential, and feel that energy. So that's on Saturday, November 24th. If you're in the area, or if you know someone who may benefit from that workshop, what you can do is send me an email to soulgpshealing@gmail.com with Amsterdam workshop in the subject line, and I will send you additional information about how to join us and give you outline of the program as well. So you're more than welcome to come and join me. It's going to be an amazing time. Also, the day before, on Friday, we're going to have an informal gathering, so if you happen to arrive sooner, we're going to meet up in the evening, late afternoon, get to know each other, set our intentions for the following day, and go from then. So, again, welcome. If you have any questions about that, send me an email. Information is going to be down below. As to if you didn't catch the email address, it's going to be down below, so you can do so. All right, let's get into the content of this video. So, how do I start my day? What do I take and why? So, before I actually have my first beverage meal of the day, if I may call that, and you'll know why I say that in a moment. What I have is I start my day with just pure water. And you probably may notice that a lot of the names of the products here laid out before you are in Polish. That's because I am in Poland right now, but don't worry, I will go through each one so you'll know what it is, and it's accessible virtually from anywhere in the world. I think these are pretty simple and basic products, especially this one, although to access a pure water these days can be a challenge, especially getting in a glass bottle. I've been incredibly fortunate while I'm here to have access to this amazing product. It's mineral water from the source, and it's in glass, and it tastes amazing. And I wanted to make a quick note about plastic. It's an endocrine disruptor. What it means is that plastic particles, when they enter the water and then they enter your system, can mimic estrogen. So what that means is that it's going to disrupt the way that your hormones are, and it's a symphony that needs to be pretty fine-tuned in order for you to feel good and for things to proceed as it's supposed to. So if you can't access water in glass, because that can be pretty difficult, what I would do when I was living in the States is I would get another beverage that was in glass and had a screw on it, and pour my water from a plastic container into the glass, at least when I was outside of the house. And I was living in California, so a lot of sunshine, and leaving your plastic bottle in the car with the sun beating on it is really dangerous, because that's when the leaking occurs. So at least if you can, while you're out, get some glass and drink your water from a glass container. That's highly recommended. If you can get your hands on water in the glass containers more often than just when you're out, that's even more beneficial. One way to solve that is to get yourself a water filtration system and then just always pour things in the glass. That could be a video in and of itself. I used to do a lot of work with nutrition and cleansing and detox. So if you guys are interested, let me know down below, and I'll be happy to do more videos on that topic. But for now, this is what I wanted to say about water. I have about half a liter of pure water when I wake up, and I've been doing this for the last 20 years. And this is something that's been incredibly beneficial, because at night is when your body performs metabolic functions, and what you want to do is flush all of that stuff out, the waste out in the morning, instead of starting with a meal or starting with your first hot beverage of choice. I'll tell you what mine is in a second, but that's going to kind of clear the way and clear the path for a really nice morning and get rid of the obstructions. So, okay, my first beverage of choice for the longest time, it's been coffee. I'm a huge coffee lover. I loved it all my life. I would always source the best cafes wherever I was living at the time. And I love the smell. I love the taste. And especially lattes. I've learned to make my own. So waking up in the morning and thinking of, I'm going to have my latte, it's just been like, sometimes the motivator that I needed to get up. Well, lately I've been doing some more research, because my anxiety has been, as I've been doing more of my own internal work, I've been tapping into, that sort of the true feeling of like, who am I? What am I? And I would always encounter this really interesting wall, so to speak, and that wall is made of anxiety. It's fear of the unknown, basically. It is, a lot of stress from the past, things that I'm still needing to work on. And at some point, it got so overwhelming, but it was very difficult for me to sleep, especially after having been through a difficult relationship that can happen. So it's been difficult for me to sleep, difficult to focus on things, and I would just go through these waves throughout my day. So I started to look into coffee and what it does to the body, especially for a highly sensitive person like myself. And what I've discovered is that, this could be a very long video if I really got into it, but I realized that it was time to let it go and try something else. So I did some more research, and what came across, actually, the way it came to me, and the way a lot of things come to me these days, is I just put out the intention and I say, I want to change something, I'm looking for this information, and within the next few days, it's like the right information floats into into my space. I don't know if you've ever had an experience like that, but it's been my experience. So that's how I learned about matcha tea. And this was not something actually that just came for the first time into my field of awareness. I've known about it, but I was never a big fan of green tea. And I love my coffee. I was attached. But here's what I learned about what matcha tea does that made me reconsider. I did a brain test, a brain assessment, which I will make a link. I will link this brain assessment. I will put a link to this brain assessment down below under this video. So if you're interested in it, you can do it yourself as well. It takes about 5 minutes. And what I learned is that my brain is deficient in something called Gaba, which is a neurotransmitter that lowers the excitability of the brain. It's an inhibitor. So instead of the brain always being in this high thinking mode, which mine is a lot of the time, it sort of helps to modulate it so you have some breaks and time for recovery and relaxation. Well, my brain was apparently deficient in that. So this one time when I was looking for alternatives for coffee, I came across this article about the fact that matcha tea naturally stimulates the release of GABA in the brain. So that was an instant switch for me. I'm like, okay, it's time to do this. So I found it at a health food store here in Poland. Again, I've seen it in Thailand. I've seen it in the US. I've seen it in England. So you can get it anywhere you live. And so I started making it. I started to make my lattes. And I got to tell you, it's been about a month and a half now. And I have not slept better in my entire life. So I feel like getting rid of coffee has been tremendously significant in the way that I'm able to experience rest and also much more consistent energy levels throughout my day. No more of these spikes. There's still a little bit of, waviness. Life is a wave. Nothing is ever fully static, but it's not disruptive. So that was a good choice. So matcha tea is basically powdered young leaves of green tea. So instead of getting an infusion, you're getting the whole thing. It's full of all sorts of great phytochemicals. I encourage you to look into it so you have a bigger picture of what it is. It has much smaller amount of caffeine and definitely very different experience than coffee that gives you that jolt and then the crash. This gives you that little bit of an uplift and then a nice cruise. And you don't have any crash. At least I don't experience any crash at all. And the way I make it is I take about a small teaspoon of that, or sometimes half a teaspoon, mix it in with hot water, make kind of like a muddy substance. And then I add hot milk to this. And this is spelt and almond that I have found here in Poland that I really like. I'm going to put this aside for now. So spelt and almond, really nice blend. I cooked that up on the stove and then I mix the two in a blender. I blend it up, make a foam. Sometimes I add a little bit of coconut oil to it to make a bulletproof version. And it's really delicious and it sustains me for a few hours. I had mine today about 2.5 hours ago and I haven't had a meal since yet and I feel great. I have energy and I feel clear in my mind. So yeah, I highly recommend it. When I'm in the US, it's easy to find good option for milk that's an alternative to dairy. I stopped taking dairy about 15 years ago and it's been also one of the best choices I've made in my life. Dairy tends to clog up your body, makes everything move slower. For me, it gives me tremendous allergies and it's not just lactose. It's the whole thing. It just doesn't agree with my body. So I feel so much better, so much clearer. My skin is clearer. My breathing passages are open. So this is what I do in the morning. All right. Oh, and by the way, as I'm going through this is not to be a medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I'm just sharing with you what I do and what works for me. All right. So the next thing that I do is I take a little bit of extra GABA, one capsule with my morning coffee. My morning tea. So not only is my brain stimulated, naturally starting to produce the GABA through the stimulation of the matcha tea, but I'm also giving it some extra. And sometimes I take it in the evening if my brain is really stimulated and I'm not feeling tired by say 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening, I take an extra Gaba to kind of calm myself down. Next is Ashwagandha. Something, again, I've been hearing about for a long time, but I haven't been using it as religiously as I do now. 1 teaspoon with water is about the amount that I do. It's an Adaptogen, also called Indian or Chinese ginseng, depending on the packaging. And what it does is it gives you that sense of strength internally. It's almost as if, you know, after being through a lot of stress, difficult relationship, you may feel, or at least I feel like I've had all these bullet holes inside of my body. I'm depleted. The anxiety draws a lot of energy from me. So the ashwagandha seems to kind of seal up the gaps and make me feel much more stable, much more strong and rooted, grounded. So this is really awesome. About an hour ago or so, around the time when I'm about to work out especially, what I like to do is have a teaspoon of this green mix. This one is a mixture of parsley, wheatgrass, and kale. Not the best tasting thing I've tried, honestly. I find that the US has many more options in the health food stores for different kind of green superfoods, but it's really excellent stuff. It's worth the minute or so of discomfort as you drink it. Same with ashwagandha, by the way, very bitter, but again, very much worth it, I think, because it suffuses your cells with so many bioavailable minerals that, again, gets depleted with a lot of stress, high cortisol levels. And this gives me that extra boost, that extra energy if I'm going to get on the mat and do yoga or do some weightlifting. Works beautifully. So I highly recommend this. This is also great to travel with, to guzzle down at the airport or on an airplane where, you know, the air is not very good. It's very dry. It's full of bacteria. So it gives you, again, that extra protective immunity. Speaking of immunity, vitamin C, I have a version of it here. It's called rutinoscorbin here in Poland. I take that quite regularly. I won't say that I take it every day, but I take it a lot. When I was going through my recovery after narcissistic abuse, I took vitamin C, vitamin B, and D3, which I don't have here with me, every single day for probably 3 months to repair my nervous system, that's B complex, to give my brain that uplift for serotonin production, that's vitamin D3, and vitamin C to boost my immunity, because it's funny how it works. It's funny how I find it fascinating how the psychological, emotional, and physical, it's almost like the same dynamic on all of these levels. What I mean here is narcissistic abuse destroys your boundaries. And as your boundaries are destroyed, it's the same thing as your immunity getting weak. So it's very easy to then pick up diseases, get bacteria attack your body, or viruses. We get susceptible to these things. So I find that these minerals and vitamins help to form that protective barrier, especially the vitamin C. So I was able to cruise through a pretty dark and cold winter of my soul, and in reality in my life, without getting sick once, which was to me a miracle, because I was in real bad shape. And I think that that's because I was taking these supplements. Next is omega-3, essential for calming down your brain, cooling it down, bringing down the inflammation that is formed from, again, high levels of cortisol in your body. So I find it to be absolutely essential in my daily regimen. So these are the things from the matcha all the way to the vitamins and the omega that I take in the morning around breakfast time. Then throughout the day, I typically don't take very much of anything, and just work, do my things, move, get fresh air, go outside if I can. And in the evening, as the sun begins to go down, I begin to take some magnesium. This is awesome product that I found here in Poland, because most of the magnesium I came across in general everywhere around the world comes in a tablet form. I stay away from tablets because they tend to have a lot of chalk and all their binders that your body doesn't need. Your liver will need to process that anyway, so why give it that extra work? This one comes in a capsule. It's chelated, so it's better. It has better absorption. Comes with a cofactor of vitamin B6, which also increases your absorption. So I take about 300 milligrams of magnesium in the evening to help me calm down. So magnesium is the calming, again, brain and nervous system repairing mineral that gets severely depleted in times of high stress. If you experience any kind of stomach issues with, say, high acid production, which is very common in anxiety and in recovery from abuse, having some flax meal, this is what this is, it's fantastic for you. I recommend, this is what I take, about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of flax with a lot of warm water. Can't be hot because it will destroy the delicate oils that are in it. But also you don't want to do it cold because then it takes a while to turn into that jelly substance. About 10 minutes is how much time you want to give it. Water is essential because you don't want this to clog up your system, but it will very nicely coat your stomach and give you a great bowel movement in the morning. Again, if you take it with a lot of water. And I don't recommend mixing this with a meal. You can have it before your supper, but on an empty stomach is the best. And especially, again, if you're feeling that acidic feeling in the stomach, which is quite uncomfortable, a lot of acid production, can feel like it's just burning up your esophagus and goes down into your intestine, not very pleasant. Again, very common with high stress. Flax meal is really good for that. And then before bed, I usually have, I will admit, several cups of hot tea. I start drinking hot tea probably around 5 or so in the evening, all the way until before I go to bed. And my favorites are lemon balm, which is Melissa in Polish, and rumianek or chamomile tea. And those are my favorites. Sometimes I have some mint tea as well. And yeah, it's nice for the fall as we're rolling into it at this time. And the days are getting shorter, nights are getting longer, creates that nice cozy feeling. I like to meditate with it as well. So just have some time of self-reflection, holding a cup of hot tea. And it's very nice to go with these choices because they do have a calming effect for most people on their nervous system. So this is what I do. I hope this was very helpful to you. And if you have any questions or additional comments, please share down below. If there are things that you do that you'd like to share with other viewers, please do so. And again, I hope you are in the area of the Netherlands this coming fall, November 24th. And if so, I invite you to join me at my workshop. I wish you all the best. Remember to trust your intuition, follow your instinct, and live a fabulous life. So I wish you all the best. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.